Good day and welcome to the Nonprofit Times Leveraging Technology and Data, How Finance Can Strengthen Performance, Funding, and Impact webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded, and at this time I'd like to turn things over to Mr. John McElwain. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to this premier Nonprofit Times webinar on leveraging technology and data to strengthen financial performance, funding, and impact. Today's session will show how the partnership between Sage Intacct and Guidestar now offers automated key metrics and performance to better tell your story. It's the storytelling that offers an opportunity to you to become more visible to donors and stakeholders. The partnership is providing nonprofit finance and fundraising teams with powerful tools and technology to more easily manage their health and stability. Today's presentation is sponsored by Sage Intacct, an industry leader in cloud-based accounting software. We're fortunate to have a panel of national experts to share their knowledge on this topic. Joan Benson serves as Nonprofit Product Marketing Manager for Sage Intacct. She has over 20 years of combined experience in technology, publishing, and consumer products. Previously, she worked as Product Marketing Manager for Sage Solutions, where Joan spearheaded product positioning and launches and serves as their market intelligence expert. Katie McCloskey, Principal Product Manager, NFP and Core Accounting for Sage Intacct, is a CPA with over 2 decades of financial software publishing experience. She has spent her time working with thousands of nonprofits, ministry, and governmental organizations, helping them with their financial needs. With experience in supporting nonprofits with their training and implementation needs, she is a regular speaker at conferences and events focusing on nonprofits. Joining Joan and Katie is Adrienne Bourdon, who leads Guidestar's strategic partnership and business development teams. Before joining Guidestar, Adrienne co-founded Social Solutions, a software company that used to generate intelligence that improves outcomes for individuals, families, and communities. He has keen insights into the practical and strategic needs of nonprofits, as well as the businesses that are built to serve them. To begin our session today, Joan.
Thanks so much. I'm so glad to be with everyone today and happy to have all of those in the audience with us today as well. So just a quick look at our agenda today. We're going to be talking about leveraging your data and your metrics that are going to help you better tell your story. We're going to take a look at the Guidestar and Sage Intacct partnership and how we're raising the bar for nonprofit finance teams. Katie's going to share with you a new digital board book, and she's going to take you into that product so you can see how it works and how it's aligned with Guidestar, and then we'll also take your questions. So it's really important what your organization's story is all about, because this is what's critical to donors, and this is what's critical to your various funding streams. So it's important to stop and think about how you're leveraging your data to better tell your story. This is incredibly powerful and important to your organization to really harness the power of your data. So it's not just in telling your story, but it's going to help you ensure better stewardship and help you maximize your impact. Data, outcomes, performance, return on mission, mission success. We're all trying to be better stewards and have greater impact. As we work to maximize that impact, we need to take advantage of the technology that's available to us today. So we're going to be talking about telling your story, capturing, formatting, and sharing that very valuable data and doing it efficiently and effectively. And this is what's going to help you significantly enhance your story. Today's technology allows you to quickly and easily do things that were impossible just a few years ago. So let's take a look as we start down this path at some of the requirements related to the technologies piece. We all know that funding is becoming more and more competitive and more complex. We really need to define what success looks like, and then we need to figure out how to measure it, monitor it, and report on it. Our funding opportunities are going to be strengthened when we have solid metrics that can be measured and reported on a regular basis. We all need accountability, and as your organization grows and expands, you're going to need more of that. We all are familiar with Charity Navigator and the different charity evaluators and how they use very specific financial metrics to rate nonprofits. But their rating significantly affects your funding. But what's recently been occurring is that they are starting to expand beyond those financial metrics, because financial metrics alone are not enough. What we really have to do is be able to track our impact or our outcomes and be able to track them and report on them on a consistent basis, because this is really what matters to your potential donors. And obviously, stewardship is important across the organization, whether that be operations, development, accounting, back office. Stewardship matters in all of these areas. So being able to define and track and measure where we are and where we want to be is just going to help ensure that we are good stewards. And by being good steward, it's going to enhance our funding and our credibility. And all of that, of course, is going to impact your growth and ultimately your mission success. So we talk about outcome or impact metrics. It's all part of this very structural foundation for growth and impact. And these really are all interrelated reasons as to why we need to have this conversation and why we need to make sure we are leveraging the technology available to us today to gain the strength that we need, not only to improve our performance and our impact, but to better tell our story. So today we know that everybody's tuned in to the internet, everybody's tracking and looking up all types of information. And so it's more important than ever from an accountability perspective or stewardship perspective, outcome, results. It's important with the competition that we have for donor dollars. The nonprofit organizations that can show fiscal responsibility as well as program investment and results can often come out the winner. So many grantors are requiring more performance and outcome measurements to ensure that they get that ROI for their investment. And while there's factors beyond metrics that often influence a donor's giving, it's visibility and that call for greater visibility into your key performance indicators that is really gaining attention and consideration. And this even affects your community. Your community support is critical. So as you begin tracking and measuring and sharing and reporting your KPIs of your organization, what it's going to do is raise the bar for everyone. So you're going to be encouraging accountability among other organizations while you're building your credibility and reputation at the same time. When we talk about this topic, one of the first things that comes up is questions related to, are we tracking performance? Are we tracking outcomes? Are we tracking activity or financial measures? Are we talking about sustainability or capacity? The reality is that just as in a for-profit environment, nonprofit organizations need a complete and balanced approach to outcome metrics. Because if it's all about financials, then potential funders and donors don't really know if you're successful in your programs or your mission. Do you really achieve what you say your program initiative goals are? Would they get a better ROI from a nonprofit that's laser focused on impact? But donors and grantors clearly care about both. They care about your financial sustainability, your stewardship, and your accountability. So again, it's that balance of both the financial, operational, and impact measures that's the key. And your unique organization and mission is going to really determine what those metrics need to be for your organization. So we have a quick polling question here, so I'd like everybody to participate. And the question is, do you currently have automated tracking of key metrics and outcomes or impact? Everybody just take a second and answer the question. Okay, so here we see the vast majority of folks do not have automated tracking of impact and outcome metrics. So this is going to be important for you from a content perspective, and also to maybe help give you a jump start on the path that you need to start planning for and build a strategy around how you're going to get there. So when we talk about automating outcomes and impact metrics, one of the things that's important is having the visibility and the access to your data, and having your data kind of tagged in such a way that it's easy for you to open your tablet, your laptop, your phone, whatever you're using, and immediately see real-time data and information and measurement of those metrics that are important to your organization. So obviously your mission is going to determine what you're going to track and what you want to look at, and different roles of responsibility within your organization is going to determine what you want on a dashboard and what you want to see as soon as you open your device. So it's important to note that it's more than having, you know, a spreadsheet or a report format. A lot of the people that we work with, you know, they have lots of team members that need to see it in a graphical perspective, and that's really quick and easy for them to see exactly how they're going to do. I was at a conference last week, and we were having a conversation with a lady, and she was talking about one of their recent meetings and reviews, and one of her team members, who's very not financial at all in nature, and she said, you know, I've had a great year. She said, I've had smiley faces all year long. So she was looking at her performance cards and seeing that she was up in a positive position from the previous period that she was reporting against, and she just knew that she had smiley faces across all the categories that she was measuring. So I think it's important that we provide the people on our organizations with information and data in a format that they can use to really track, monitor, and know exactly how they're doing. So Guidestar, I want to introduce Adrienne to you in just a moment, but Guidestar is the premier data aggregator in the nonprofit space, and they became an Intact customer back in 2016. And really because both of our organizations have been very focused on helping nonprofits really utilize their data to better tell their story, it really became clear to us that there were synergies between us that we could leverage to enhance support of nonprofits. And as a nonprofit org, Guidestar's products focus on data and tools that really advance transparency and enables us to make better decisions. So as the leader in modern financial management technology focused on visibility and automation and insight, a partnership was just a natural outcome. So it really made a lot of sense for us to work together so that we can help nonprofits leverage technology and help organizations better tell their story, grow their support, and increase their impact. And that was kind of the genesis of the relationship. Now, one more before Adrienne comes on. I wanted to ask everyone to participate. Check the box. Have you seen your Guidestar profile? It'll take just a few minutes. If you don't know what that is, then you probably haven't seen it. Okay. So good for you. Most of you have seen your Guidestar profile. That's fantastic. So that's good news, Adrienne. And I wanted, as I'm getting ready to turn things over to Adrienne, I wanted to give you a little sneak peek. This is one of the things that just setting up for you, one of the parts of the digital board book that Katie's going to be showing us later and going behind the scenes to talk about. So you'll have a little bit of an idea of what's in store for you and kind of what this partnership is doing for nonprofit organizations. So Adrienne, I'm going to turn things over to you, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Joan. It's my pleasure. John, Katie, nice to spend some time with you this afternoon, and thanks to everyone who is joining us today. I know it's also, this session is being recorded, so certainly we'll make sure that any information that's shared in today's session gets out to you as a registered attendee, as a registrant, and to folks who are attending today. So really exciting to be on today's call, particularly now in the middle of July as we prepare for what we generally consider giving season. So the timing is right for me to share some of the whats and the whys about how you can capitalize on how your Guidestar profile can help you strengthen the way you amplify your voice in the marketplace, and hopefully demonstrate ways in which you can take those results that you have, whether you have systems to capture them or whether you have accomplishments that you're proud of, and share them with the world. We're going to move fairly quickly today through a presentation. What we are not going to focus on is the how. I'm going to share with you a number of reasons why Guidestar, your presence on Guidestar is important and should be important to you as a leader of your nonprofit organization. Virtually everything I talk about today is something you can capitalize on and a member of your team can take advantage of for free. But do keep in mind that these are resources that you'll want to capitalize on by going to guidestar.org and registering as a user. We are not going to focus a lot of time on how you do the work today. Hopefully today you walk away with a sense of why this is important and what it can mean to your organization. So while I appreciate that many of you on today's call have at least have awareness of or have seen your Guidestar profile, some still do not. We're about a 24-year-old nonprofit organization. Our primary role in the marketplace is to aggregate, as Joan mentioned, both IRS data and data that's coming directly from nonprofit organizations. We catalog that information and make it available on a website that's guidestar.org. This website is free to anyone on today's call. If you're a nonprofit, you have free use of this intelligence. And I want to sort of share with you what's going on this website today. So increasingly, as you might recognize and hear about, folks are, as Joan mentioned, increasingly looking for intelligence to guide their giving, and Guidestar.org is a source of that intelligence. Here are a few metrics that we track that show our results about how registered and unique users are increasing quarter over quarter, year over year on Guidestar.org, and on the right-hand side, the frequency or the volume of searches that are increasing on Guidestar.org as well. Keep in mind, why are people coming to Guidestar.org? They're coming to Guidestar.org to find information and intelligence about you and your organization. It's important for you to understand how to capitalize on that, on the FaceTime or those folks that are looking for organizations like yours. In addition to the search environment, users and number of searches, you should also know people are coming to Guidestar because we are the aggregator of data. We have now almost 4 billion pieces of data on the nonprofit sector, as you see listed on the left-hand side. And increasingly, nonprofit organizations are not just letting their 990 data speak for themselves. They are taking advantage of what I'm going to share today to be able to claim and update their profile so that their data is telling a story that is compelling and attracts the attention of prospective donors in the marketplace. And what we'll, in the latter part of today's presentation, I'll highlight what each of these levels mean. Guidestar allows you to claim your profile for free and then add a little data that allows you to earn seals of transparency. The first seal is a bronze seal. I cannot stress enough how important it is when you think about Guidestar as a search mechanism. You want to be found. So you want to make sure all of your information is accurate on Guidestar. You want to make sure your address information, the name of your organization is accurate. If someone can't find you, they're not going to keep looking. They're going to move on and maybe direct their attention to another organization in your community. Obviously, we're on today's call in large part because donors are increasingly looking for evidence of financial sustainability. Obviously, stewardship, as Joan mentioned, that's an important and second seal of transparency. The last two seals of transparency, gold and platinum, are really focused on results. And I'll share with you some intelligence that we see based on donor research that tells us that increasingly, when you combine financial stewardship and potential, this capacity of an organization to serve, with evidence of impact or results, you are really hitting the sweet spot when trying to attract new donors. This is really the guiding principle of Guidestar's seals of transparency. So, as I mentioned, we are collecting data both from organizations who submit 990s to the IRS. What you see on the left is an actual 990. On the right is a cleaned up version that we publish on Guidestar.org. You can imagine and understand why donors are coming to Guidestar to view the cleanest and most up-to-date sources of 990 data. Historically, if it's been a while since you've been to Guidestar, you may recognize this landing page. This is what an organization might have looked like on Guidestar 3 years ago. Thankfully, a year and a half ago, we were fortunate in securing a significant investment from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and others that allowed us to really bring our database into the 21st century and present for everyone, if you are a representative of a nonprofit organization, a really elegant and easy-to-use platform that allows you to both speak to and attract the attention of donors in the Guidestar.org environment. Again, everyone, if you are a nonprofit organization or representative of a nonprofit organization, you have a profile on Guidestar today, and that profile is being examined by donors on a regular basis to learn more about your organization. Here's an example of one of our premier partners, the National Audubon Society. Not only do we take this data that we aggregate from the IRS and nonprofits themselves and publish it in Guidestar.org, perhaps even more importantly, we are pushing this data out to hundreds of partners and channel networks. These are the partners who run powered by Guidestar databases on their websites. You can imagine the importance of making sure that your organization is represented on Amazon Smile. You can imagine how important it might be for you to make sure that donors who are looking to find your organization that may be part of Vanguard Charitable, as you see in the right-hand side, or Fidelity Charitable. These are donor-advised funds where donors are keeping charitable contributions until they determine how to distribute them. Today, Guidestar has over 220 data partners. Each of these data partners are pulling your data from our database and publishing it on their website so that their users can find you and contribute to you. Sometimes these are as informal as an Evite. If you've ever received an Evite, on the right-hand side, you may have seen an in lieu of gifts. Consider making a charitable contribution to the host's favorite charity or selecting your own. You want to make sure that your organization shows up in that search box so that person can contribute $10, $50, $100, $1,000. So in many ways, Guidestar is not just a source of intelligence for the donor community who's going to Guidestar.org, of which you saw 7 to 10 million searches will be done this year. We have another 20 to 30 million people who are finding your nonprofit information through our data distribution network. Both of these are free to you as a nonprofit organization as you claim and update your profile. It's a quick snapshot of what this looks like in a number of our partner platforms, Google, Capital One, Amazon Smile, of course, perhaps one of our most prominent partners, Fidelity Charitable, Facebook, which came on board last year. We actually had hundreds of thousands of organizations and individuals take advantage of this link, the ability to link your Guidestar profile to your Facebook page, particularly important for fundraising strategies that you and your communications team may be involved in. And coming soon, Guidestar will be the source of intelligence on what's called Google's Knowledge Panel on the right-hand side. We anticipate that to be live before the end of this year. So again, these are all ways in which your data is speaking for you. It is amplifying, Guidestar is amplifying your voice. I want to spend a little time talking about why this is so important. As Joan mentioned, Guidestar is fundamentally focused on helping you attract new donors and interest in 3 primary categories on the listed on the right-hand side. Those donors who are seeking to demonstrate the impact that their dollars are making, those where they want to share they have personal ties with the organization, and those where they want to show that they're making a difference. These are called psychographics of the donor environment, and what we're really trying to help organizations recognize is if you are moving beyond a friends and family contribution strategy, if you are trying to reach and engage new donors, you really want to capitalize on Guidestar as a fundamental technology tool, not unlike your website, certainly even more important increasingly in today's world than your annual report. Guidestar is the place where folks are going to make a first and often lasting impression of your organization. What are donors looking for? Well, certainly this data is almost uniformly understood in the sector today. It comes from a Money for Good report. I'd like you to focus on the 2 green boxes on the right. Donors are telling us they struggle to trust the nonprofits and the beneficiary community, primarily because the data they're gaining access to is inconsistent or less available than they'd like it, and they feel overwhelmed or ill-equipped to make good giving decisions. That's where Guidestar comes in and meets this really critical next level of intelligence. Just as in the same way donors are looking for that intelligence to inform their giving, we think the next question we ask is, what's the intelligence they're looking for? You heard Joan mention this a moment ago. This should come as no surprise to anyone, but fortunately, sometimes it's good to have a little substantiation and evidence to back up our claims. All types of donors, individuals, formal advisors, and professional foundations are fundamentally looking, by and large, for two sets of data as they're making giving decisions: financial capacity or sustainability, as you see here, and evidence of effectiveness. This, as you recall from our seals of transparency, is entirely bound up in the silver level of transparency, Guidestar silver seal, which you can earn very easily and for free, and gold and platinum, which are focused on articulating the difference you make and showing that difference through results. Should also recognize that increasingly online intelligence is being used to inform the donor community, and what you may notice on the right-hand side here, just as important, donations are no longer wedded to organizations for eternity. We are increasingly seeing that the next generation of giving and even the last generation of giving are increasingly using circumstances and data and discretion to make giving decisions. They are not giving to the same organizations year in, year out because that's what they did last year. They're increasingly recognizing that they have intelligence that they can use to change their giving strategies. You want to make sure that you're capturing an increasing number of those donors who are switching from some of your competitors in the marketplace and applying to or attaching yourself to and making yourself available to those new donors who are using these online giving platforms. The last sort of fact and figure for you, if you weren't convinced about the importance of online resources and the malleability or the ability to influence a donor's grant making based on evidence of financial sustainability and impact, you also should recognize that donors are increasingly comparing you and your organization to others who do same or similar work. While we see that it's still a small majority, this data from 2015, we are anticipating almost 15%. The next year's report for 2018 is not yet public, but we do anticipate an uptick from the 9% you see on the right, which is 3 times what was in 2010, up to about 15% of donors in 2018. Again, looking to compare the performance of nonprofit organizations to make sure they're giving to the organization that best represents their expectation from a results or financial sustainability perspective. Important insight for you to know as leaders of your organization, just substantiation that this is an important tool to use, and much of what Joan and the team at Sage Intact are doing and what we're doing in Guidestar is really built to push you in this direction. We're going to spend a little time today talking about why this intelligence is important. Katie's going to walk us through a really great board book, so I'm not going to really burden too much of my presentation on this. Suffice to say, donors have the ability through Guidestar, and you as a professional in the sector have the ability to look at your organization as a donor sees it. Look at your organization's financial performance year over year, and look at how your organization's financial performance compares to others who are doing similar work in your sector. One of the things that comes up whenever we talk about financial sustainability and capacity to serve is overhead. And what I'd like you to recognize today, if you're not familiar with this report, I would encourage you to go online to bridgespan.org and download a copy of this report. It is really a fundamental tool that can help defend against this perception that that overhead, specifically 15% overhead, is in some way a reasonable expectation for a nonprofit organization. Some of the analysis that Bridgespan did really helped organizations position themselves and essentially say, first and foremost, 15% is rarely, if ever, a sufficient level of overhead to be charged. More specifically, if you can find yourself in one of these sort of headings listed along the x-axis, U.S. direct service organizations, advocacy organizations, and international NGOs and research organizations, you can recognize that depending on where you fall across this NTE sort of continuum. 15% is even less accurate than it is if you're in category A, what is typically understood to be some of the most efficient and often volunteer-led organizations, all the way to the right where you see overhead approaching 90%. Again, not suggesting that either of those numbers is right, but as you are formulating your approach to the marketplace, it's important to be able to have a defense against the overhead number. This is an important report that I strongly recommend leaders of the sector to download for free and take a look at to sort of strengthen yourself. The last point I'll make about overhead is that essentially overhead is, as you see in the orange category here, the source of the knowledge and intelligence that guides your organization. And too often we diminish that understanding and underfund that sort of intelligence gathering. Much of the intelligence that Katie and Joan and her team are generating through the board book, much of the intelligence that Guidestar allows you to promote and amplify about yourself in the sector, it's really a byproduct of guidance and effectively overhead and systems management. We're a strong proponent of making sure you have the tools and resources you need, not just to work harder, but to work smarter. Again, I encourage you to take a look at this report. Again, bridgespan.org. It's a great source of intelligence about how to defend yourself against the overhead myth. So I want to take a moment and talk quickly about results. Nothing can be more important in the sector today. First and foremost, a number of you mentioned that you do not have a systematic way to capture and catalog and share your results. Certainly, I will say nothing more than to recommend that you work hard to try and find a way that you're making incremental progress in getting your board and your leadership team, your program managers and your direct staff, service staff aligned in this direction. If not for yourselves professionally, then for the clients, constituents, and communities you serve. There's a certain vernacular that is increasingly evident in the community of practice related to impact. Some items here, I'm not going to review them all. They're all in this deck. You can review them later, but really want folks to become increasingly comfortable understanding that impact and evidence of impact is a continuum. We can move from anecdote, I think I made a difference, all the way to randomized control trial, which says that my program made a difference in a way that no other program can or did. This is a continuum. You should position yourself along the continuum and make sure that you understand where you are and where you're going. Align your resources with the greatest likelihood of ROI. Today, as I mentioned, Guidestar gives you the opportunity to share your results with the world. This is a really compelling way in which to capture the attention of the donor community that are searching for your organization. We have just under 7,000 organizations who've shared their results. You see in the middle of the slide about 20,000 results that have been published out of a total of 40,000 that have been submitted. Most organizations are submitting about 4 results per organization. So the important takeaway here is you can really highlight your organization by sharing just 3 or 4 results about the work that you're doing, and you'll immediately show up in the small subset of the highest performing organizations, those committed to sharing the results with the world. Today, this is just under 2 years old. So if you recall, I mentioned that we have about almost 4 billion pieces of data. This is the data that is the most important to the majority of the donor community. How can you share and show the results? How does this work in Guidestar? Again, today's not the time when we're going to walk you through this process. It is free. Any representative of your organization can spend 15 to 20 minutes updating their metrics to make sure they show on your Guidestar profile. It's a simple search function. You can look for a metric that we're already capturing, or you can add your own. Once you add that information, the Guidestar system will invite you to submit 1 or more years of data if you happen to be capturing this information longitudinally. We'll ask you to contextualize it a little so a user or a seeker who's interested in this can learn a little bit more about what you mean and how you do it. And then we will publish this on your profile. Again, this is a way in which the donor community can quickly see that you are an organization that is not just talking about achievement, you are actually tracking and measuring that achievement. quick sneak peek, a little highlight that we like to share to folks who spend the time listening or on a webinar like today. If you're not familiar with this, I would strongly recommend looking it up online. It's a free resource, Impact Genome Project. This is a way in which organizations can position themselves and understand how closely or far away they sit from research or evidence-based models that already exist in the marketplace. You see 10 domain areas. If your organization does work in one of these domain areas, a quick 1-hour survey, again, a free survey, will allow you to say, wow, our organization is a lot like this other organization that has the following results. And you can start thinking about benchmarking yourself anonymously or participate in cohort-driven activity that allows you to share your results with others and learn from one another. We're really driving toward peer-to-peer learning. What are folks getting from your Guidestar profile? So the first and foremost thing that most formal donors are getting is what's called Charity Check. If you're not aware of this, it's a fundamental function that's a part of every donor's portfolio of needs. They need to understand at the time of their contribution that your organization is in good standing with the IRS and related federal and state requirements. They're getting that information out of Guidestar. You will likely see that listed on your Guidestar profile. Many of our partners in the philanthropic community are literally using this every day, have their checklists to make sure that their audit records are consistent so that they are tracking their giving and confirming that the organizations they're supporting are in good standing. Secondly, donors are looking to use our search functionality, our map-based search in particular, to find organizations that are doing great work in proximity to where they live or where they work. So if you've not taken advantage of the ability to load in zip codes or counties and specify to the donor community where you're seeing your success, this is increasingly the way donors are seeking. They're looking for organizations by cause and organizations by place. Today, we allow donors to use our map-based search to find you. You want to make sure that you are representing yourself in your Guidestar profile. Again, free and easy to do. It takes about 10 minutes to update your profile to include where you exist on the map so a donor can find you. As Jonas mentioned, and Katie will share quite significantly, Guidestar also takes the time to catalog financial information from your 990s and information you add voluntarily through the silver level of seal of transparency, and make sense of your organization from a revenue and expense perspective. This is not the end-all be-all, but it is increasingly the place where a sophisticated donor will go and say, do I understand that this organization has the capacity to meet the need in their community? Where are their needs? How are their revenue and expenses lined up? What are their fringe benefits? What's their overhead? What's their primary source of giving, etc.? This is really a simple way for donors to get not a 10,000-foot view, maybe a 1,000-foot view of the organization before they dive in and determine how and whether to support you. Here's an example of results. I would certainly never recommend that someone puts 10 years of results. 3 to 4 years are really sufficient. And increasingly, folks, if you're not familiar with diversity, equity, and inclusion, it is increasingly a source of intelligence that donors are looking for. It is a guiding principle for many philanthropies and increasingly individual donors as well. Folks you do have the ability to share how your organization's leadership and staff reflect the community you serve. We represent that graphically in a de-identified and anonymous way. We also, of course, have lots of operational intelligence related to governance that donors are using to make sure they are supporting the organizations that are aligned with their areas of interest. Last sneak peek, and then we'll transition over to Katie. So not only is this information that whatever you share with Guidestar that you do freely and voluntarily promoted out into the world of millions of donors who are increasingly sophisticated and using online intelligence to guide their giving, we also give you the ability to auto-populate grant applications. So this is just about a year and a half old. We're still just getting out of the gates on this, but I think if you're a nonprofit organization, particularly if you're on the fundraising side of the equation, this is the beginning of the Holy Grail. So what Guidestar has done, we are not just a database, a free database for nonprofits and donors. We also offer services. One of those services is called an API, an application programming interface, and we allow a grant application, an organization who's a grants management software provider, like Flux, like Round Corner, there are a number of them out there today, to auto-populate, to give their clients the ability to auto-populate their grant applications. So what you're going to see here is what that looks like for a prospective donor in what's called a Foundant implementation. This is one of our partners. Foundant is a grants management software provider. When a nonprofit organization is invited to or goes online to fill out an online grant application, you see they have two buttons that are made visible to them, one of which is the one on the right called Copy Guidestar Profile. So if they have submitted their data on Guidestar, as you see the nonprofit has submitted data to the Guidestar profile, they can choose to use that data to auto-populate the grant application. In this case, we see very simplistically 6 or 7 data fields that can be auto-populated so they don't have to complete them every single time. Most deployments have 15 to 20 fields, and we generally say this is essentially page 1 of a grant application. You're not going to use Guidestar to auto-populate the really substantive work that you're going to do related to a program grant, but you're going to want to make sure, just in the same way we do auto-population throughout the web today, you want to make sure that this information is readily available so it takes you 5 minutes, not an hour and a half, to get the first 20 or 30 questions of a grant application complete. Again, this is sort of what that looks like. In the grants management software, the little Guidestar icon would show next to that data element. If you chose to select it, you'd be able to edit it in the software, but it would pre-populate it so that you can spend more time working on the substance of your grant application, less time working on some of the administrative pieces of that intelligence. I'm going to transition it over to Katie, who's going to dive deep into some real financial intelligence. Again, I really appreciate your time today. Try to focus on what Guidestar is and why it should be important to you, particularly today, the 26th of July. We're about 45 days from the beginning of giving season. We generally say that kicks off in early September. If this is important to you, if it's important to look your best for an ever-expanding group of prospective donors, many of whom you may never know or may not talk to, but are using web-based tools like Guidestar and some of our data distribution network partners to learn about you, it's important for you to take advantage of this free resource. Go on to guidestar.org, register as a free user. We do have a training session that will allow you to claim and update your profile, open to the public on August 30th. If you want more information, we'll make sure to send that along at the conclusion of today's webinar. Katie?
Thanks, Adrian. All right. What I'm going to do now is give us an opportunity to see kind of how you can take a tool set, right, to have more of that visibility within your software. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click Share. So we should be able to see my screen here. Hopefully that's come over for you so you're able to now see my screen. And basically what we're taking a look at here is kind of a classic view. This is a dashboard, and I thought it made sense for us to look at a dashboard because we're really talking about, insight, outcomes, performance, and a dashboard is really a tool set, right, that helps people to have that type of visibility. I thought I'd start here with kind of a classic style of dashboard because a lot of times when people think about dashboards, they're thinking of, executive level, board members, things, people at that level in terms of that's who's going to get this insight. But you can do a lot more, and I want to give you an opportunity to kind of see what that more looks like. So let's see here if I can. There we go. I'm trying to move this around a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click here onto another dashboard. And this is where you start to see, right, moving beyond just views for executives and those type of people, you can start to get within an organization, you might be able to think about getting, metrics as well as financial, outcomes into the hands of decision makers, right? So this is a view that we're looking at here that's really designed like for a location director. And you can see as we look at the information that's included here, that we have an idea of where we stand against our budget numbers. We can see, we start to see some of the outcome information, right? So that they can see how they're performing, how they're doing, okay? We could open this up further, right? And we could say, well, this outcome information, maybe we want to look at that as an organization overall, right? And how we're doing. And this kind of gives you an idea of how you're able to look at some of those impacts. And again, we're marrying together here, the outcome pieces, right, plus the dollars and cents of being able to deliver on those programs. So you can see here, for example, I have performance cards of this information where I'm able to compare either against like a prior year. You might compare against a budget. Perhaps you have a goal, right, of how many kids you're going to assist or something of that nature. So you can plan for that and then see how you're performing. As Joan's talking about, I think right at the beginning she talked about a nonprofit organization that had smiley faces all year, right? You can choose, right, whatever the indicator are, right? But you can see here, right, I have the green flags, things like that to help you know kind of how things stand. We also have some examples here where, we're able to see more than just numbers. We can also decide that we want to do computations on those numbers, right, to really know how things are going. So in the center of this particular screen, you can see where we've taken the expenditures for each of the program service areas of this organization. We've compared that to the number of clients that are actually served by each of those programs and derived a cost per client, right, so that we can kind of see where things are good and where we might stand to improve. You may also want to dig into these numbers. If something you saw here was a surprise, you may want to click and drill in, right, see more about that financial data, see more behind where the client serves, see more of those details. And that's certainly something that's possible. I'm just kind of showing you again how you can, illustrate things in different ways and make sure that you're understanding, exactly how the organization is performing in terms of impacts as well as the financial aspects. Continuing along here, another thing that we've kind of talked about is our work with Guidestar, right? What is it we've done? So one of the things that Adrian had on the screen for a little bit there was the financial scan information. And this is a really, helpful area that they've really invested in helping organizations to have context around what should you be measuring when it comes to, the dollars and cents and what is a healthy organization and what is, what are the areas that would be causes for concern. This is a guidebook that helps people with that. A lot of times when you're, guiding an organization, you may already have a feel for some of these things, but especially as board members come in and they may not have, they may have a lot of financial experience, but it may not be in a nonprofit context. And this can really help people to make sure that they're asking the right questions and looking at the right numbers. This is actually an example of a report, and one of the nice things it does is it takes the results that come from the 990 filing and help you to see, just as Adrian said, through the lens of what would a donor that was evaluating, giving to you, what would they see, right? What are the things that are going to stand out? It helps you to identify what are the things that they're looking at and to give you some perspective, right, in terms of, what does each metric mean and what should be considered, what should be the questions that are being asked. And that can help you to best tell your financial story. I'm going to click over here into a tab where you can see this is a board book that we have partnered with Guidestar around, and it mirrors in many ways that financial data that you just saw through the financial scan. It takes those metrics that have been recommended and it puts them into your system so that you can see in real time kind of where you stand against, over time, how you're performing, those sorts of things. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you another view here. We were just seeing just a few minutes ago, some of the graph metrics and things like that are part of Financial Scan, and all of those are also built in as part of this digital board book that we offer. And we also try to include some of the questions to consider. You can also do things like not just take context away from what these numbers are, but you can actually compare yourself with other organizations. This benchmarking is designed to really try to give context to how do your numbers stack up against other organizations that are similar to you, right? Not just in general in the world, but organizations that are similar. Guidestar has made the investment to put these metrics in a way that you can actually see organizations that are similar to you. If I was to drop down here, you will see, right? You can get a comparison of other organizations that are very similar to your mission and what do they look like in terms of metrics. That gives you the context to make sure that you understand what your numbers mean, right? Whether that's in a graph context or back here in more of a report spreadsheet style. Okay, so that's been the intention. So hopefully this kind of gives you an idea or helps you to see what's possible in terms of looking at things. And again, if you have a question, if you see something and you say, hey, that's a little bit of a surprise, right? One of the great things about this is, again, you can click and start that drill down path to get at numbers that underlie, where did this come from, right? Where this number is lower than I thought or it's more than I thought. Let's get in, let's see those details, and we can. With that, I'll go ahead and, Joan, allow you to finish the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Adrienne and Katie. Great overview and really gives us an inside look behind some of these metrics and numbers. So, John, it looks like we have some questions.
Yes, we do, and I want to thank Joan, Katie, and Adrienne for a very informative session. The question that was for Adrienne is, does Guidestar hope to help nonprofits communicate to donors FASB changes that will require organizations to report programs versus management and administrative costs differently in the future? Joan, maybe you could handle that question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that question for me? This is Adrienne.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, John.
Adrienne
Okay.
wanted Guidestar to help with the new FASB changes and reporting requirements.
Sure. So what neither Katie nor I showed, but is an important part of our financial scan functionality, is a partnership with the Nonprofit Finance Fund. They are a source of tremendous intelligence for us. We are both a data source as well as a promotional source, helping to get the word out, but Nonprofit Finance Fund is really one of our key partners in helping bring intelligence to the reporting that Katie and I have just mentioned, and they are helping us make sure that we are communicating both to donors and nonprofit executives and boards how the changing FASB requirements are and should be understood. Now, I will say we are not going to present ourselves as the singular and authoritative source of that intelligence, but just as you saw a number of places where we can add context to help inform that local discussion, we are committed to doing that, and certainly committed to working with Sage Intacct and others who have significant resources dedicated to doing the same. Joan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say absolutely. I think that's one of our primary roles is educational in the space, and so that's something that we always try to highlight, focus on, and hopefully pull in together all of the sources of intelligence like Adrienne was referring to, so that we can help organizations better leverage that, even if it's in footnotes and presentations of some of their reports to their board or to some of their donors, just helping give them the resources that they need as we go through this.
Adrienne, what percentage of Guidestar's organizations in your database include non-IRS data that they upload into Guidestar?
Great question, John. So you may have heard me mention this. We have about 2.6 million organizations in Guidestar's database, and that's a great number to say out loud, but it's a little deceptive because we have captured every nonprofit that's ever been in existence since 1994. The number of active nonprofit organizations in our database is actually closer to about 1.2 million. So when you look at the number of total active nonprofit organizations, about 1.2 million, and the number who have contributed voluntarily data through this profile update program or this transparency process that I illuminated, which is about 60,000 nonprofits have done that. So you get about 5% of all nonprofits have updated their profile with voluntarily provided information. I will say, if you're a nonprofit of a certain size, and we use sort of an organization that files a 990 to be an organization that has a certain financial capacity, we have about 300,000 nonprofits who filed 990s. So if you look at the percentage of organizations who've added voluntary data as a percentage of just those who file 990, and not the EZ or the N or the postcard, then that jumps it all the way up to 20%. So the larger the organization, the more likely it is that they're recognizing the importance of using this amplifying mechanism to get the word out, and they're increasingly adding the context and the details, like I shared, to capture and capitalize on that attention from the donor community.
Thank you. Another question is a concern about how regulators look at performance versus outcomes. There's always been a fear as this data becomes more available to different stakeholders, and that is regulators and donors and even prospects, that this whole scheme will turn into a price war where the lowest reporting cost for an organization will be the one the donors are most likely to give to, and yet regulators may not look at that. Is there any kind of clarity that you can provide in terms of how this is all going to turn out with these questions about compensation, for example?
Did you mean compensation at the professional level or contributions to an organization?
No, the compensation at the professional level.
Gotcha. So I will tell you, I've been doing this measuring. So we use the word results as distinct from outcomes very intentionally. Many organizations have not yet been able to reach that continuum that I mentioned earlier of an outcomes continuum, which is a persistent and consistently achievable result that's directly caused by or correlated with the services that you offer. So that's a fairly high bar that a small percentage of programs can use. We see that there's still a lot of room for organizations to be able to substantiate their claims that they make a difference. We certainly see there's a high bar of some organizations that are increasingly sprinting ahead and taking advantage of resources to prove that they make a difference. The vast majority of organizations are still cataloging their results and sharing those results, and I will tell you, we are not yet seeing that onerous or draconian sense that you point to, John, that says that we're going to race to the bottom and find the cheapest provider of what appears to be a results or outcome service. We're not seeing that at all today.
Right. Thank you for shedding light on that, and I want to again thank you, Adrian, Joan, and Katie, for a very great and informative session, and this concludes our webinar today.